at the international desk. New details about Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with a Russian lawyer. Mosul celebrates its liberation, but prepares for challenges ahead. And a CNN exclusive, the secret documents that explain the Qatari crisis. Welcome, I'm Lynda Kinkade. The White House is in damage control after more information surfaced about a meeting between the US president's son and a lawyer with alleged ties to the Kremlin. According to the New York Times, Donald Trump Jr. was told in an email that information would be offered in that meeting, and it came from the Russian government. Jason Carroll reports.
Another potential bombshell report from the New York Times alleging that Donald Trump Jr. received an email informing him that the Russian government was trying to help his father's campaign. Before his June 2016 meeting with the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, former campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and a Russian lawyer thought to have compromising information about Hillary Clinton. 3 unnamed sources tell the Times that the email sent by Rob Goldstone, a music publicist who coordinated the meeting, indicated that the Russian government was the source of the potentially damaging information. 6 weeks later, Trump Jr. slammed the Clinton campaign for suggesting that the Russians were involved in an effort to help then-candidate Trump.
It just goes to show you their exact moral compass. I mean, they'll say anything to be able to win this. I mean, this is time and time again, lie after lie. It's disgusting. It's so phony.
Trump Jr.'s newly hired lawyer insisting in a statement that his client did nothing wrong, noting Don Jr.'s takeaway from this communication was that someone had information potentially helpful to the campaign, and it was coming from someone he knew. Don Jr. had no knowledge as to what specific information, if any, would be discussed. The White House on the defensive.
Don Jr. has very explicitly stated he didn't even know the name of the person with whom he was meeting. There was no information given, there was no action taken, there was no follow-up.
The president's campaign did not collude in any way.
Congressional investigators probing potential collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, already expressing interest in speaking with Trump Jr., who tweeted Monday that he would be happy to pass on what I know.
This is the first time that the public has seen clear evidence of senior-level members of the Trump campaign meeting with Russians to try to obtain information that might hurt the campaign of Hillary Clinton.
President Trump's legal team choosing to reiterate an earlier statement when asked about the new report, noting the president was not aware of and did not attend the meeting.
So to date, at least 7 current or former members of Team Trump are now under question for what they did or did not say about their meetings with Russian officials. You see some of the notable names there, including Michael Flynn, Jeff Sessions, Jared Kushner, of course. A source telling CNN that members of the Senate Intel Committee should begin interviewing some of these members of Team Trump as early as this week.
Jason Carroll reporting there. Well, as you just heard, the White House is distancing itself from Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting. However, one top presidential advisor tells our Alison Camerota that's not unusual.
There was no connection. She was a private lawyer who had an interest with regards to the Russian adoption program and used a pretext to get a meeting with the campaign, which the campaign representatives almost immediately realized was not done in good faith, that she had another agenda.
That's right,
and therefore
but
the meeting ended.
What's funny, Mr. Gorka, is that they wanted the original agenda. They wanted the dirt.
Which is what political campaigns do.
Well, while the fight over who did what and who knew what rages on, President Trump's agenda seems to be stuck in neutral. Our Jeremy Diamond joins us now from Washington. Jeremy, we are seeing this drip, drip, drip of information, and now these reports, the first public indication that at least someone in Trump's campaign was willing to accept Russian help. The former ethics lawyer for George W. Bush says this borders on treason. What should we make of it?
Well, you heard the response from White House official Sebastian Gorka just there. Donald Trump Jr.'s attorney has also responded to these allegations, calling them, quote, much ado about nothing. So clearly that is the response from the White House and from Donald Trump Jr., who has also been active on Twitter yesterday and this morning, pushing back on some of these reports. But clearly, this is the latest instance that we've seen of a report of contacts between a Trump campaign associate, in this case, the president's eldest son, and Russian government officials or people linked to the Russian government. So clearly this is a story that is not going away for this White House. And in this case, we have, not only is this the president's son, of course, but also this son who is has been told in an email before this meeting that the information was coming from the Russian government. That's at least according to the New York Times, which is citing 3 people familiar with that email.
Yeah, a huge, significant piece of information. And as you mentioned, we are seeing this pattern of Trump team members either lying or failing to disclose Russian contacts. How damaging is this to the White House right now and its ability to govern?
Well, much of this came about after Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and one of his top advisors, had to actually go and update one of his disclosure forms to disclose this meeting. This is not the first time that he's actually had to go ahead and update one of these forms to list one of these meetings with a Russian official of some kind. And so clearly this is a pattern here that we're seeing from this White House. But this is keeping the White House once again mired in these Russia controversies. Yet again, we're seeing the White House's efforts to focus on other issues like policy. This week, of course, healthcare, a major focus for this White House as they're trying to convince Senate Republicans, enough of them at least, to rally behind this bill to repeal and replace Obamacare. Clearly, this White House is instead focused on responding and swatting away some of these reports about Russian controversies instead of being able to focus on those efforts and really getting those Republicans that they need, 50 at least, to get on board to repeal and replace Obamacare, one of the president's top priorities.
Yeah, certainly a lot of distraction from the real job. Jeremy Diamond, thanks so much. Well, the Russian lawyer who met with Donald Trump Jr. is telling her side of the story to NBC News. She says she has no connection to the Kremlin, had no dirt on Hillary Clinton, and only wanted to talk about Russian adoption law.
In June, you met with Donald Trump Jr., with Jared Kushner, with Paul Manafort. What was the purpose of that meeting?
I never knew who else would be attending the meeting. All I knew that Mr. Donald Trump Jr. was willing to meet with me. I could recognize the young gentleman who was only present in the meeting for probably the first 7 to 10 minutes, and then he stood up and left the room. It was Mr. Jared Kushner, and he never came back, by the way. And the other individual who was at the same meeting was always looking at his phone. He was reading something. He never took any active part in the conversation. That was Mr. Manafort.
Well, our Matthew Chance joins us from Moscow with the Russian side of the story. Matthew, this Russian lawyer indicates that it was the Trump team who was chasing them for dirt on Clinton. And she said, and I quote, they wanted it so badly. What else can you tell us about her? And does she or does any of her family have ties to the Kremlin?
Well, I think the very fact that this meeting was held and that Donald Trump Jr. Found the time in his busy schedule, apparently, to have a meeting with a Russian national whose name he didn't know, but who promised, or who he was promised would have information that would be potentially damaging to the Clinton campaign and to the Democratic Party, is something which is, at the very least, unethical and may well be looked at by the investigators looking at the connections and the allegations of collusion between the Trump campaign team and Russia. In terms of what this lawyer, Natalia Veselnitskaya, has in terms of connections herself to the Russian government, it's unclear. Certainly the Russians themselves, the Kremlin, say that they do not know who this woman is, that they certainly didn't send her with any damning information about the Democrats. The Kremlin sort of dismissing the suggestion, saying that we can't monitor every meeting that every Russian lawyer has at home and abroad. But certainly it is known that this lawyer was a leading advocate to overturn the US Magnitsky Act, which is an act aimed at punishing people the United States government believes are guilty of human rights abuses inside Russia. She represented a company, a holding company based in Cyprus, which was indicted for alleged attempts to launder some of the millions of dollars that were defrauded in the Magnitsky case fraud some time ago. And so she's connected in that sense. What we're lacking at the moment is any sort of definite line from the Kremlin to this lawyer, and so we can say that the Kremlin deployed this lawyer to try and influence the Trump campaign team. That's the suggestion, but there's nothing in terms of concrete proof of that at the moment.
Oh, Matthew, I'm wondering if you can shed some more light on how the Kremlin works. As far as I understand it, the Kremlin often uses people who are 2 steps removed, so there's plausible deniability that they had anything to do with it. Just explain how the Kremlin operates.
Well, I mean, certainly, I think it's not just the Kremlin that operates in that way. I think that would be a wise strategy if you want to do something which is immoral and potentially illegal. But certainly, drawing a direct line between these individuals and the Kremlin has proved very difficult. It's why we haven't seen the smoking gun exposed already, because that kind of straightforward evidence just doesn't exist. But you're certainly right in saying that the Kremlin, we expect, would have no qualms about using its own contacts, deploying legal operatives, deploying agents, deploying its business contacts to make whatever inroads it can into the Trump campaign. That's something that the Kremlin is accused of doing and is subject of a US investigation now.